Hello, and welcome back to Health and Wealth. I'm Ana Ramos, and I'm really glad you're here. Let me start with a question we don't ask ourselves often enough. Do we really know what's going on in someone else's life? We're quick to judge, quick to compare, quick to assume everyone else is fine. And maybe that's because most of us wear fine incredibly well. We show up, we perform, we lead, we smile, all while carrying things that never make it into conversation. There's a version of you that the world sees, and then there's a version of you that's just trying to get through the day. What makes this harder is that so much of what we see, especially online, is an illusion. Carefully curated moments that rarely reflect the full truth of someone's life, their health, their fear, or even their exhaustion. My guest today, Jane Stevenson, knows this firsthand. Jane is a strategist, a mentor, and a leader with decades of experience. And she's also someone who lived through something most people never even knew. 6 months before she walked a 2-kilometer hike, Jane was told she might never walk again. What followed wasn't just a physical recovery. It was a reckoning with the mask she wore to survive. The bravery she had to have to hide the fear, the happiness to hide the sadness, strength to hide her vulnerability, energy to hide her exhaustion. This conversation isn't about taking the mask off before we're ready. It's about understanding why we wear them, why they protect, and what they quietly teach us about ourselves and others. If you've ever looked at someone else's life and thought, they're fine, or if you ever said, I'm fine when you weren't, this conversation is for you. So take a breath, settle in, and let's talk about the masks we wear. Jane, it is such a pleasure to have you join us for today's episode here at Health and Wealth. And thank you for joining us all the way from the UK.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me into your space.
Oh, it's such an honor to have you join us. And it's so interesting how we met, and and then when we started talking, we're like, oh my gosh, we could talk about so many different things. But I think that today's topic is more about the masks that we wear. And I think it's such an important topic because we are sitting here in a world where we talk a lot about authenticity, but what does that really mean, right? Because are we truly
Yeah.
being authentic, or are we being authentic to the word, but not to what the meaning is? And I think it's something that people need to hear, because I think it's okay to show emotions. It's okay to
Yes.
understand why we wear, this mask in order to be able to function or whatever it is. So I want to start the conversation around that, I think that many times we do have friends, and sometimes we do know what's going on in their lives, and sometimes we don't, right? And
Yeah.
the question is, do we really know what's going on in someone's lives, especially when they say, I'm fine?
I don't think so. And it's so interesting because I was reminded of this just yesterday. There's always these moments in life, isn't there? I was attending a business breakfast, and this woman who holds a very senior leadership role in politics, in the public space, and on all her social profiles appears to have everything just perfectly thriving. But she stood up and she shared her journey of racial prejudice, judgment, and loneliness. And she said it had been the hardest year of her life. And I looked around the room, and not one person in the audience was even aware of what she'd been through. And I guess, Anna, in so many ways, the same applies to you, to me, and to everyone else. We've all got stories to tell, and we never really know. And maybe that's just the point, is we need to stop assuming that we do and creating narratives on behalf of other people. Because it's almost like that, how are you, is now performative today. It's not really asking genuinely, how are you? Because not many people stick around to hear the truth, which is quite sad in itself.
Yeah, and it's funny because as I was thinking about our conversation today, and I came aware, we came across a word with "I'm fine," right?
Yeah.
And I was joking around with the team, as we were getting ready, and I said that reminds me of the Pretty Woman episode when Richard Gere, she gets upset, with him over something, and he asks her something, and she turns around and she goes, I'm fine.
I'm fine.
And then he has something else, and she says, I'm fine. And then he has something else, and I'm fine. And he was like, okay, that's three fines.
And
it's
it's so
like, don't you
true.
get it? She's not fine.
Yeah.
She's just not telling you.
And
So
very often the words don't match the facial expression or the body language. I'm fine, but actually you can see they're not. So
yeah.
it's an interesting world we live in.
And you know, the question for me is, why do we create this mass? I mean, I've done a lot of search for myself because I've been through so much, and I'm sure as you have, and we had this conversation how, we sort of have to put on this mask, right? And whether we're females, and I don't want to go into the whole thing, oh, you're female in corporate America and male in, but yes, there is some truth to that. And so we tend to wear this mask, right? We tend to create these images of who we are supposed to be or who they expect us to be. Why do we create this mask in your years of
Yeah.
experience working in that field?
Gosh, it's so interesting because I think each of us has a different story, but I think it starts early on. I mean, if I think of my own life, I go back to school days. I wore glasses, I had a squint, I was short, and I got teased. And I pretended to be fine. And sometimes, I know honestly, sometimes I even participated in my own ridiculing, thinking that if I laughed first, they couldn't hurt me. And today we call it imposter syndrome. Back then we called it survival. And it's so weird how we start becoming comfortable with those masks and wearing them more frequently than we need to. But not all masks are negative either, because sometimes they do offer us a safe space and a haven to retreat to in a world that isn't always comfortable with authenticity or really give a damn. So it's
Yes.
an interesting space to be. But I do think it starts from very early on, and we're not taught anywhere in life about masks, about how to use them. Even boys talking about gender specific. Boys, when we were growing up, were told not to cry. Um, they weren't allowed to, just wasn't a done thing. How sad is that? And we are evolving as humanity, but we're also still sticking with the norms, which is quite sad.
Well, it took years to get there, and it's going to take years to come out of it.
Yeah,
And but it's so interesting because I know, when I look back at my life and I look at some of the masks that I've worn, right? And I remember everything had to be fine, right? But deep down inside, you were off. You cried. I remember when I first, ended up leaving corporate America and building my own company. And I remember crying for the first, it must have been the first 3 years. I swear to God, it felt
yeah,
like, every day. It was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this. But what I realized, it was that by me giving that feel to everybody else, right? That everything is fine, don't worry. It created trust and it created assurance because of the business that I was in. I mean, can you
yep,
imagine having your leader in the financial, who's supposed to lead you financially, everything, like start to fall apart as she leaves corporate America into building her own firm, and here they trust you and they follow you. So you had to give that appearance that everything was fine. But the way that I was able to cope with the stress and cope with the unknown, right? And I cried. I cried, but it helped me to release. I didn't realize how much, from a nervous system perspective, I was
yes,
releasing by doing
yes.
that.
And that's so key and so crucial is we layer these emotions, we layer grief, we layer disappointment, we layer all these things, we mask them. And then something happens and you have this release. And suddenly it's like the floodgates open and you realize you're not releasing the one thing, you're releasing all of it. And it comes out in different disproportionate ways. And it's something that I've really learned to, well, am continuing to learn to try and do is to feel the emotions when I feel them and to allow that because otherwise it just continues internally.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think that for what we can say about the world of authenticity that we live in today, which I think it's helped me to help embrace authenticity, right? Because sometimes we create this world of who we are supposed to be, or
Yes,
you know who we want the world to see, right? So we create this. Sometimes we start to believe in it, but more importantly, I think that we create the expectation that the world expects us to be a certain way. So, what would you say the pros and the cons would be when that happens?
I want to just touch on something before I answer that. And you mentioned that this perception of what we think the world wants us to be. And I think that social media has a lot to speak to in that space. Online we share the positives, the moments that make others stop and wonder why our life looks so great and theirs doesn't. I fall into that trap often. I mean, with all I've been through, I still catch myself curating the best moments, the great photos, but not the hard days, for fear of judgment. And comparison really is the thief of joy. Yet we continue playing the game. And the challenge, for me, the challenge isn't about knowing that we should be authentic, because I think we all do, and I really do. I think the challenge is that authenticity sometimes genuinely feels dangerous when you've spent years being the strong one. And we have to make sure that the company that we keep is the right company as well. Because it's not safe to be yourself in everybody's company either. We all have our own agendas. So it's quite an interesting world that we live in. And working with this persona of who you want the world to be, the quicker we can internalize and work with ourselves to figure out who that is and become one with that, either, for us to push ourselves into being the person we want to be, or to take a reality check and say, this is who I am. I was in an interview the other day and somebody said, tell me about one characteristic that you feel might lead you in this role as a senior person within our business. And I said to them, I'm unapologetically authentic. What you see is what you get. And when we can own that and be that, and it's a conscious decision every day, because it's hard. But when we can own that and be that, I think we live a more fulfilled life.
Yeah, I think, and I think that the more you live and the more you experience that, I think you become more
Mm,
sure of that. I know that for me, through the years, that's what has happened. I was supposed to be, I was a preacher's daughter, so I was supposed to be this perfect girl this perfect little girl that did, that served God, that did this, that did that, that didn't wear mini skirts, right? And then when Anna wanted to live and be Anna, she wanted to wear her mini skirts. And then I had to put up with the ridicule and, the finger pointing and things like that. And to this day, I still remember that. And I say, wow, and now I realize why my connection to a church, for example, is the way it is, right? To me, when I go to it, I get a different reaction than somebody else might, but it's because of what I lived into it. And, one of the things that I've had to learn to do is to in living life, Jane, the way I've released all that, first I have to become aware of it, right? Why am I wearing this mask? What's the real deep feeling behind it? And then once that happens, I'm like, how do I release this? And one of the best ways that I learned to do it, besides crying, because that releases my stress and my nervous system really helps. Because I'm a very emotional, I feel things. Like people can be in a room and I feel them, but one of the things I do is that I have this little ritual that I do, and I just grab whatever it is when I'm ready to let it go, and I wrap it in the most beautiful gift, the most beautiful ribbon, the most beautiful package you would ever see, regardless of what it is, whether it's hurt or not, or something beautiful in it, but it's time for me to release and let it go. And then I literally, in my head, I just put my hands together, I put that package there, and I release it into the world. And
that's beautiful.
that's my way of releasing it, and releasing it with love, releasing it with light, and just saying, thank you for serving me.
No, I was just going to say that is such a healthy way to do it. It's such a beautiful way because sometimes those things are really hard, they're hurtful, they're deep, and yet you let it go with love. That's incredibly powerful.
Thank you. I don't know when I started doing that. Maybe perhaps, I don't know, we had a lot of pets growing up, and when they passed away, my mother always had us do a little ritual for them and to share the beautiful stories, the beautiful experiences. And so the way I look at things, death, right? Separation, I look at them very different. I look at them with love and with gratitude. I think that is a kudos to my parents for the way they raised us and how we accept that aspect of our lives of letting go. Now, I know that when we were talking, you have a beautiful story as well, right? That I would love for you to share with those who are listening, because I think it's such a powerful story. that kind of talks a little bit about the mask that we wear because of who you are, Jane, and I'll keep it low key, but you are definitely a leader and a public figure, and you have done beautiful speeches. Tell us, can you walk us a little bit and only share as much as you feel comfortable? Walk us a little bit through
Sure.
what happened there and what mask you wore and what was the good and the bad of that.
Sure. I love your reframe of a beautiful story because it's not yet sitting with me as a beautiful story, but we'll go with that. I like your reframe better. Well, it was back in 2015, and I just started as a new role as an exec director in a technical production company. And I was invited as a keynote speaker at the industry's seminar in South Africa. And it was my first public appearance in the industry. My topic, interestingly enough, was the power of purpose. But the universe definitely had a different message because just before going on stage, it was early morning, just before going on stage, as I always do, I went into the bathroom to sort of have a moment with myself and get myself in the right space. And I fainted, but I fell directly backwards and onto porcelain tiles. They found me in a pool of blood. And after days in hospital, consults with neurosurgeons and specialists, the prognosis was that I'd done some damage to my cerebellum, which manages everything around your balance. And damaging it further could actually be fatal. So there was no medical cure, no operation, nothing medical that could actually heal the brain function. It was just going to take time. And the neurologist said to me, it takes 2 years for the brain to completely heal itself. And at that point, you'll know if you can walk again. There were no guarantees that I would be able to walk independently again. Now, from being on stage or about to be on stage to being told that in a different space, it was just the first time in my life that I couldn't manage the narrative. I felt completely out of control. I was in a hospital in a strange city. I was unable to even sit upright without falling. Nobody knew me there. There was nothing that I could do to other than my own mind. And all the masks I built throughout the years, well, they all followed me into that hospital room, believe me. And some of them cost me the chance to ask for help because, again, people would phone or pop in. Some of my colleagues would pop in and say, "How are you doing?" I'd go, "I'm fine." To your point earlier, the magic
What's
word,
that
"I'm
word?
fine."
Fine.
I'm strong. I'm fine. I'm going to be fine. And they'd leave. And the minute they'd leave, I'd just cry. And and my husband was an absolute pillar of strength through this all. But when you're known as the strong one, the capable one, the people that walks onto stage, talks about purpose to others, that gives the motivation to others, you don't often get offered softness. And the sad part is when you do, you don't know how to accept it. So the deeper cost that I nearly missed with that fall was also that my body was telling me for signals throughout a while that I needed to slow down. But Anna, I have a very, very efficient internal system for overriding those sort of messages that come. I've got a smile, I'm fine, I've got a plan, I've got the next thing to do on the list. The mask didn't protect me at that time. It made me feel quite alone, but it was of my own doing. And it was quite interesting because it was months later of wallowing, spiraling, pity parties like you wouldn't believe. Something just switched. And I made a conscious decision and I realized that nobody is going to get me through this. It's not medicine, it's not specialists, it's not anybody but me. And when I realized that, it was a case of what do I do with this? And 6 months later, 6 months after being told I may never walk again, I completed a 2 kilometer hike and did 10 zip lines. So I do nothing in moderation, just by the way. So I did all these crazy things. I made a full recovery and I delivered that keynote the following year at the same conference. And when I look back, it wasn't because my brain had fully healed, but because my mindset had. And it was kind of my wink to the universe to say, watch me, I'm here. And yeah, I guess that's the story. And, the mask served me at some point in there, I guess, but I don't know that they served me well.
Well, looking at it back, did it not serve you well is the question because you were able to not sit in your own self-pity. How many people have I met that is like, oh, you can't walk, right? And it's like, oh, the doctor said I can't walk. or I may not be able to walk. And you begin to tell yourself that story, and that story begins to manifest itself into your everyday living, right? And
Yeah.
thank goodness that you wore your mask that said, no, I am purpose driven, I'm capable, I'm strong, I can get through this. It's mind over body, mind over body, right? Thank God that you wore those masks, because you're here today and you're able to walk and you're able to do all the things that they said you may not be able to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm living a full life. I'm traveling. There's absolutely no restriction in terms of walking at all. Um, I think I think it took me going downwards to understand where I had taken myself, not anybody else, because I was very much in the blame game at that stage, pity parties and how is this happening to me? And of course, social media then creeps in and shows you the wonderful life everybody else is having. The associations that I belong to, the networking groups are also having their events, and they've forgotten about me. That was the narrative I started telling myself. But actually, they hadn't. Life had just continued as it had, and something in that space just had happened to me that took me away from that for a moment. And in many ways, one of the greatest lessons I've learned through this is that your inner voice is either your gift or your enemy. We choose how to run that show. We actually choose which way to go. And it took me a long time to understand that, and still a daily conscious decision to remind myself of that as well.
How do we become aware of that inner voice, Jane? I did coaching with somebody who I completely adore, and he had me name, by the way, my he called it the ultra ego, right? That
Yeah.
second voice. And by the way, her name is Lucy from the I Love Lucy show, because my inner voice is extremely strong, just like you said. It's like, it's strong. It's like, Anna, you can do this no matter what. And sometimes it gets too intense, right? And so the reason I named her Lucy is because I will always remember when she's stumping on the grapes and she's so mad, right, that she ends up falling, and then she ends up laughing because there's nothing else she can do. So sometimes it's like, for my inner voice, when it becomes too strong, and it's in because of the strength, it starts creating those masks around. That's why I say, "What's up, Lucy?" Like literally, "What's up, Lucy? What's going on? What are
Brilliant.
you feeling?" Right?
Yeah, that
How
is
how
absolutely brilliant.
how do we begin to identify that inner voice, to understand that is this is Jane, this is Anna, this is me, and this is that other voice that eventually helps me to create this mask, right?
Mm. Well, that voice is always there, and it's the loudest voice we have is our own mind, right? It's constantly either telling you you can, telling you you can't, telling you you're inferior, telling you or building your ego, whatever voice we give it. And as I say, we're the one that gives it the strength, so we're the one that can take it away. But I guess to find that voice and to hear it, we need to stop the noise around us. Today's world doesn't offer a lot of silence, and we need to cull the noise a little bit and take time just in nature, breathing, whether you meditate, however you choose to do it, is to to get to know your voice. We get to know friends. We spend time with friends. We ask friends for coffee dates or dinner dates or whatever we ask. We don't ask ourselves the same thing. We just let this voice creep. And it's the creeping and the not knowing who it is. When I mentioned to you, I always go into the bathroom before I speak. It's because I look in the mirror and I actually pump myself up. I look in the mirror and I say, "You can do this. You've got this." Something that you say today will resonate with somebody in the audience. It only takes one thing to change somebody's life. And I literally build myself up. I consciously do that in a public space with a mirror so that I'm seeing myself. And I think we don't often see ourselves as who we are and accept ourselves for who we are. We do it with friends, but we don't do it with ourselves. And I think we owe it to ourselves to spend more time understanding ourselves, our fears, our joys, our happiness, and not taking on the labels of what we should be, could be, or everybody else wants us to be.
I think that's so beautiful. So I guess the biohack, I was going to say to you, Jane, I do want some biohacks when we are living in this world of I'm fine, right? I was going to say I want some biohacks, but I think I'm gonna fill in the first biohack for you. Date yourself. Date yourself.
Yeah,
Go on a
yeah,
date with yourself and just have a conversation. Sit, maybe, I don't know, maybe sit on one side and then move to the other side and ask yourself the question.
yeah,
Answer the question that you're asking. But I think that is such a beautiful way because
yeah.
I think that all the things that we do to hype ourselves, right, in your particular scenario, those are things that serve us. Those are things that help us, right, to be able to accomplish. But the opposite can also be true, right? When we
Correct.
say, I'm not this, I'm not that, or, that also can work against us. And it's still a mask that we wear because we're saying, I can't. So you're putting on that mask, right, that says, I
Yeah,
can't mask. But how,
yeah.
how does our body and our demeanor and the energy we give when we switch that mask and we say the mask that I can do this, right?
I mean, if you and I were sitting together and you said, "Oh, I'm really feeling lonely," or "I'm feeling whatever," I would sit with you and say, "Tell me about it." But we don't do that with ourselves. So you're right. I love the reframe of date yourself. I like that. I'm going to steal that one definitely.
Go for it.
And and I think that the funny thing is, and you mentioned it earlier too, Anna, is that your feelings don't disappear just because you ignore them. They just go, they kind of go underground and they wait. So another sort of biohack, if you like, is let your feelings feel. Let yourself feel it, or they're going to haunt you. And something else probably is box breathing. So you know the 4 in, hold, 4 out, hold, etc. That really does calm the nervous system. It's practical. You can do it without anybody noticing anything weird about you, and it's a really really good practical space if you're ever feeling that anxiety taking over.
I think that's so beautiful. I learned how to do the box breathing even stronger when I tried the cold plunging, and it was
Oh,
actually
good for
a
you.
client's. Well, it was actually a client's dad, and that's how we met. And I always wonder, it's like, what would it be like to be in there in that water? And I would just put my foot in, and I was like, that is too cold. And then he's like, come here, let me show you how to do it. And he says, first he had me put my earphones on and listen to this beautiful music. And he goes, think about the music, and now let's do the breathing. Now walk in, and all you're going to focus on is the breathing. And before you realize that, I was there 7 minutes inside of this 30-degree, well, in Celsius, not Fahrenheit, or whichever way the other way
Yeah,
around is, right? But it's amazing how the body can adapt. And the adage just says, mind over matter. It's actually quite powerful and quite true. Just like we have the other adage that says, fake it until you make it, right? So I think there's such beautiful ways that, or a world that we live in. It's such a beautiful world that we live in. I think it's just what we choose to grasp onto.
and yeah, and it reminds me of a photograph that I often use in some of my presentations where two people are on a bus. One is looking this way, and all they see is grey, cloudy rocks and doom and gloom. And the other one is looking out and seeing sunshine and a beautiful view. They're both on the same bus, on the same road, and the same journey. And nothing around them necessarily is different, but their lens that they look at life through is different, and that's what we can control. And the difficult thing is it is a beautiful world, but there's also a lot of things going on, especially at the moment, where we feed ourselves with the noise and the conversations that drain more than they give. And a gratitude journal really helps in that space as well. And I remember one day I'd started a gratitude journal when I'd made that decision to really shift, and I couldn't find anything. I dug deep. I could not find a single thing to be grateful for. But there was a damn mosquito flying around in the bedroom, and I got it. And that was the single thing I put in my gratitude journal that day, is that I got the mosquito. And sometimes you do have to dig deep, and it is the little things. But you are so right. It is a beautiful world, and it's our choice as to how we see it.
Well, I think it's more beautiful if you actually grab that mosquito, you kill that mosquito with the chopsticks.
I wasn't quite that good. It didn't quite work that way. Believe
You're like,
me.
that's my next goal. That's my next target. Um,
Yeah.
and Jane, as we come, close towards the end of our conversation, which we could continue to talk so much about it, because I think that who we surround ourselves with, who we learn to trust, who we learn to open. I've learned so much about myself in working with others. And there's this one particular person that stands out as we're having this conversation, and she does have a lot of mental health issues, right? And it's okay because it's, yes, diagnosed it, but the question is, do you live with them? Do you allow them to live with you, even though these are your diagnoses? Do you allow them to live with you? Because we are in a world where, especially our children today, they're being diagnosed with all of these different types of mental health, and we're very big on mental health. But how can we, if we are in that parameter of I'm fine, or we're wearing that label is, well, this is what society, this is what who they told me I am, or what I have, right? Kind of like with you, you couldn't, chance of you walking are very small or none, right? When we're living with these labels, what is the one way that we can biohack ourselves, right? To kind of begin to break away from that and truly live a fulfilling life, regardless of what's going on in our lives.
That's a big question,
I
and
know.
I don't know that anyone has the golden nugget to that one. But one thing that I can say is don't let it define you. Just because something happens to you is not who you are, and and that's really really important. I was speaking to somebody the other day who is currently going through menopause, for example, and she says menopause has just taken over my life, and I went, no, menopause happens to women at a certain stage of life. It happens. Just live through it. It's not who you are, though. It's not. So, in all these things, I think the hardest lesson is that it's okay not to be okay, but don't let it define you. And don't make that your label, because while the world might want to give it to us in terms of our diagnosis, it's simply their opinion of something, and they don't know who we are. In my case, much bigger than anybody telling me I wasn't going to walk again. They didn't know. The neurosurgeon 2 years later just incidentally said to me, "You have got one heck of a strong mind." And I went, "Yes, I do." And he said, "I didn't know that I'd ever see you walk into this room. And I'm absolutely delighted that I can tell you that was you that got you through that." And the power of the mind is an incredible thing. And it's our gift, and we have complete control over it. So don't let things define you. Um, Take things on, but don't let them define you.
I think that's such a beautiful way to wrap this conversation, Jane, because we do live in a world that wants to define us, right? To what it expects us to be. And for us to be stronger than that, more know our purpose, right? Going back to your conversation about your purpose, and but knowing our purpose to be strong and to stand by it. And one of the things that I love with the younger generation today is that they are strong. They're saying what's going through their minds and what's going through their heads, and the filtering that older generations have, it's almost not there, right? The filters
Yeah,
have come off. So perhaps we are building more towards a world of authenticity, but true authenticity, not what we think the world wants us to be. And I love this conversation because it's as we work through our path into wealth being, right? I think that when we look at our careers and we look at our health and we look at our finances, we can tell ourselves what the world wants to hear, right? Or we can truly be honest with ourselves and sit with our own feelings and connect to our purpose and always continue to redefine our lives and our paths.
absolutely. And, we're all walking around with something that nobody else can see. It's a fear, a diagnosis, a grief. There's some version of ourselves that we're too afraid to show the world. And we keep saying, to your point, we keep showing up saying we're fine. So, for those who are watching this, and if fine is the mask that you're wearing right now, you don't have to be fine. It might be the bravest thing that you take away from today. And surround yourself with people that genuinely care about you and allow them the space to come into your life and to help you.
Ah, that is so beautiful, Jane. You did such a beautiful end to this conversation that I won't dare to top it off at all. I think it's stunning what you said, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm hoping to be able to
Thank
bring you
you.
back because we can have so many more conversations. And I just, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. That will go on my
Thank
gratitude
you.
journal.
Ah, and mine. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the space to share my story. It was quite interesting because as I was going through, thinking through, the events, there were some triggers. So it shows you that the masks are still there. They walk with us daily. So thank you for the reminder. I appreciate it.
You're so welcome. And I'm so glad that you beat that one.
Me too.
You did it, girl. You did it.
I did it. Watch me.
Well, I look forward to speaking with you again and have a beautiful, beautiful day. Thank you.
Likewise. Bye.
Bye bye. As I reflect on this conversation, what stays with me the most is how quietly human it is to wear a mask. So often we think strength is loud, visible, obvious. But what Jane shared reminds us that some of the greatest strength lives in the unseen moments, in getting up when no one is watching, in putting one foot in front of the other, when the outcome is uncertain, in wearing a mask not to deceive the world, but to survive a season of life. This episode isn't about exposing everything we're carrying. It's about softening the assumptions we make about others and about ourselves, because we don't always know what someone is navigating behind the version of them we see. And sometimes, neither do we fully understand our own inner landscape until life slows us down enough to listen. Jane's story is a reminder that masks are not failures. They can be courage. They can be protection. They can be the bridge that helps us cross from pain to possibility. And maybe the real invitation here is compassion. Compassion for the people around us who look just fine. And compassion for ourselves on the days we need to be fine just to get through. If this conversation stirred something in you, then it's done its work. Jane, thank you so much for your honesty, your courage, and for trusting us with your story. And to everyone listening, may this be a permission to stop judging what you can't see and to honor the quiet strength it takes just to keep going. Until next time, this is Health and Wealth.